What's your best walk of shame story? In college, one of the bigger sororities had almost weekly socials at their sorority house. These socials were just formal spring and summer parties. These girls were wild. Their brother fraternity, who was always there, was just as wild. To say that these parties were fun would be a deep understatement. My roommate at the time was dating the vice president of the sorority, so he went to these socials every weekend, and by proxy, I was always invited. I was single at the time, so I was always game to party with these girls. There was one caveat: this sorority had a strict no guys sleeping over policy. This created an interesting problem. If you met one of the sisters that you had a rapport with, hooking up at the sorority house was not an option. Furthermore, pledges were not allowed to sleep anywhere else but the sorority house, thus making it impossible to hook up with a freshman or new pledge. The sorority's president, we are going to call her B, had achieved legendary beach status. If rumors were to be believed, she would crucify and steal all of the future children of any pledge that broke the rules. It was known, especially among the fraternities, that B was not to be effed with. She could put a man in his place with so much as a stare. Despite this, she was very attractive. Tall, former volleyball player, pale-skinned brunette. Heaven help any young fraternity pledge that made a pass at her or behaved in any sort of chauvinistic manner in her presence. At best, she would destroy their masculinity with her words; at worst, she could get them blackballed. Have I painted a clear enough picture of B? Stick with me, these details are important for the climax. Oh yeah, small but important detail: B was also my roommate's girlfriend's best friend. Let's get to the night of my story. It was a humid Saturday night in late June. My roommate's girlfriend invites me to her sorority social that evening, but throws me a curveball. She tells me that I have to keep B company. Now, up until now, I've been to 5 or 6 of these socials and only had minimal interaction with B. Frankly, the stories of her righteous beach hammer scared me enough that I would consciously make myself scarce if I ran into B in the sorority house. My roommate's girlfriend must have sensed my uneasiness, and immediately assures me that she's actually pretty awesome if you get to know her, and that she only has that reputation because she's protective, and finally that B is totally crushing on me. I reluctantly agreed to keeping B company, fully expecting to leave the social that night with one less ball sack than I currently have. Since this is already running long, I'll skip the finer details of that night and give the cliff notes. Scared as I was, B was surprisingly sweet to me. She drank a little more than I recall her doing in the past, and got very touchy with me. She fed me drinks well into the wee hours. Not being much of a drinker myself, this got me absolutely tossed. At some point we went to her room and proceeded to hook up, and did so quite loudly for a few hours. Here is the turning point in the story: she told me to stay with her. Remember how I said guys were not allowed to stay the night? The sorority president was breaking her own rule. Now comes the shame. Around 8 a.m. the following morning, my roommate's girlfriend, along with 5 other sisters, entered B's room. B and I are both naked as jaybirds, under the sheets thankfully, when they enter. My roommate's GF and the other sisters proceed to read the riot act to be about breaking the rules and allowing a guy to stay the night, and how unfair it is that their boyfriends are not allowed. B is silently listening to their concerns. While this is going on, I am nervously trying to grab my boxers off of the floor with my toes. I manage to get them, and slide them on under the covers. I stand up out of the bed and grab my clothes to make my hasty retreat out the door. Roomie's GF stops me. "Atlantic Fit, sit down, you are the evidence." At this point, I decided silence and complacency is my best course of action until this spat reaches its conclusion. After a few minutes of back and forth, B relents, and agrees to change the rules to allow a guy to stay one night a week. It was at this juncture that I got the feeling that this was a setup by my roommate's GF, as she was always complaining about how he could never stay with her because of the house rules. I slowly began to suspect that she had planned this with the other sisters, and that I was just the catalyst to make this change. When the other girls left the room, I quickly dressed, assured B that I would call her, and left the room. The front door was on the other side of a breakfast nook that I had to walk through to leave. The entire sorority is sitting in this breakfast nook, discussing what just went down in B's room. As I pass through, they all fall silent, staring at me. My roommate's GF says, "Thanks for your help, Atlantic Fit." As I shut the front door, I hear 30 sorority girls burst into laughter like a coven of witches. To this day, I have never felt so used.